Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Eaton and I live in Minot, North Dakota, and today I want to talk to you guys about some of the pressures that I've noticed in my various spheres of influence. I've worked with students in a plethora of ways. My husband and I are the junior high youth directors at our church, and so I've seen pressures on students in that aspect. I did a 3-year stint through Minot Public Schools teaching at Head Start, and so I saw pressures that affected students and parents there. And this year I am at our Redeemer's Christian School and I'm teaching high school English, and so I see some pressures there. And while all of these different areas have different pressures, there are 3 universal ones that I've noticed that affect all of them. And the first one is that we see a lot of depression in students. Our church noticed that this was a major issue 2 years ago, and we put on a large depression seminar. We brought in professional child psychologists, we brought in professional psychologists, we held a panel with them. They each had presentations, and they kind of just talked about what depression is, what causes depression, what are some ways that we can treat depression. If you have a friend or if you yourself are going through depression, what are some resources that you can have? Who should you turn to? And we had a really good turnout with students and with parents and even just people from our community coming out. And while it's still an issue, I do believe that that seminar really helped just enlighten us to the problems that our students are going through, and that depression is a real thing and that it can't just be swept under the rug. And so, while I can't say for sure if we've seen less of the depression, we definitely are more aware and we know how to handle it a little bit better. The second pressure that I've noticed on students is just the changing economy with oil. My husband is in the oil field, and when we first moved up here in 2015, he went through multiple layoffs. And I know that a lot of the students, their parents went through layoffs and they were in the oil field. We saw a lot of students that were leaving because their families just couldn't afford to stay here anymore, so they were being displaced. We saw students that had to move schools, and so that was just really hard on students themselves. And as in the community at large, we just saw a lot more crime. There were men who were making a lot of money, who had bought houses, who had bought boats, who had bought other luxuries that now had this debt weighing over them. They don't have their good paying oil job. It's hard to find a job that pays as well as oil. And so they were just vandalizing or stealing or just moving around. So that was one thing that we noticed. Now that oil is kind of stabilized, we definitely don't see that nearly as much anymore. But we know that oil is a volatile industry and that could change at any time. So that's just something that we think about with our students as well, especially those whose families are in the oil field. The final pressure that I've noticed is teacher salaries. Even just this last summer, our Minot Public Schools, the MEA, which is the union that represents a lot of the teachers in Minot Public Schools, and the teachers themselves just couldn't come to a decision. There were negotiations about teacher contracts and salaries and sick leave and all of this stuff. And basically the teachers wanted raises, and they wanted to be able to use some of their sick leave to care for adult children, not just small children in the home. And so negotiations were happening. They weren't coming to conclusions. So finally, on July 17th, teachers were issued their contracts, and they were given 2 weeks to sign them. And what the public schools ended up doing for them was they gave them a $100 base salary raise for new teachers. And they said, you can move through the ranks, the salary scale, based on your education and based on your experience. They didn't really budge on the whole sick leave debate. They said, here's your 7 days, you can use them as you see fit, but they weren't going to especially allocate sick days for that. And then a lot of teachers, they felt that this was unjust because they've noticed that they've just had a lot more problems in the classroom. They've been physically injured by students, verbally injured by students, and I even saw that when I was teaching at Head Start. There's just a lot of anger issues in the classroom, and So teachers just felt that they weren't being compensated for what they were dealing with in the classroom. And so those are just some of the pressures that I've noticed in Minot, and I look forward to hearing about your guys' pressures. Maybe you guys go through something similar and maybe you guys have found some answers. I'm excited to hear about those. So thank you for your time.